Hello everyone. You're about to hear a synopsis of the film British Psycho. Enjoy watching. Dangerous prisoner Kane Burgess was taken to the hospital so he could say goodbye to his dying mother, but it was too late. The woman had passed away. Nevertheless, Kane wanted to at least look at her body. After saying goodbye to his mother, the criminal knocked out all the police officers in the escort and escaped through the back exit. Kane went into some pub. The bouncers tried to stop him, but after a couple of punches, they lay under repair on the pavement. The handsome man decided to have a beer before solving his problems. "I haven't seen you before. I've rarely been anywhere." "Oh, I keep the lights on, and am the life of any party." The local drug dealers were discussing how some thug chopped off their friend's arm. Toon allegedly scared off that butcher. Kane laughed at this brat's story because he remembered things were a bit different. "You ran away long before the police arrived." "What?" "Running, dropping your slippers." "That's what." "Should I add scars to your face, you bastard?" Kane told how it really happened. The dark-skinned arm dealer approached the stranger who was staring at them and immediately lost his arm. But Toon immediately ran away. It was Kane who killed the arm, and now he left his friends with a sawed-off shotgun. However, Kane hadn't come for them, but for their boss, Lincoln Burgess. Haight was surprised. That guy was locked up for a long time, but now he's standing there looking so handsome. It was as if a fire had been lit outside and put out with a shovel. Kane closed the place and smashed the leg of the guy who lunged at him. The foot was left hanging by a thin piece of flesh. He had to kick the thug in the face to stop him screaming. Toon still doesn't believe it was Kane was knocked down by an arm, but the crazed guy came to them with a gift. Kane threw a package on the table. Inside was a hand. He also has a beef with Hyde. Kane forced Hyde to call the boss and ask him to come to the bar. It's time for the gang to find out where the handsome guy got all those scars. 7 years ago, Kane approached his brother with a proposal. Kane wanted to open a gym, but he didn't have the startup capital. That's why he turned to his brother, the moneylender. However, Lincoln strictly adheres to one rule: never lend money to relatives, especially since Kane had screwed up. The boxer was supposed to lose a recent fight, but instead, he knocked out his opponent, and they all lost a ton of money. Lincoln might make an exception, though, if Kane would get involved in a certain case. The man tried to stay away from crime, but he wouldn't see the money any other way. Today, a certain Maybelle would receive a package in this office. Kane would have to follow the woman and retrieve it. That's how Kane ended up in the filthiest and most brutal prison in all of England. They threw him in with hardened murderers and repeat offenders. It's not for nothing that this prison is called a meat grinder. Kane was heading to the shower when a huge bull started beating him. The newcomer relied on his boxing skills. It wasn't easy, but he managed to overpower the big guy. However, Kane was immediately stabbed in the side with a shiv. The boxer brutally beat up this jerk as well. The other prisoners joined the fight. The newcomer was subdued and forced to lie face down on the stairs. A powerful kick to the back of the head left Kane without his front teeth. At the hospital, he received metal crowns, and his smile became irresistible. His youngest son's mother came to visit. She was disappointed. He was always asking for trouble. The woman asked Lincoln for help, as she couldn't afford a lawyer. But the older one said that his little brother was to blame for everything. That asshole never even came to see him. So Kane had only himself to rely on. For some reason, the other prisoners decided to kill him, no matter the cost. During a fierce fight, Kane received his first deep scar. The guards were happy to add truncheon blows to his kidneys. No one cared that it was self-defense. So Kane got an extra year added to his sentence. The boxer resigned himself and continued training. For him, his entire prison term was a never-ending battle. Kane survived only by becoming a fighting machine. Over time, the man stopped feeling physical pain. This was a great help during the constant fights with other prisoners. However, Kane was troubled by one question. Why did every asshole in this prison want him dead? One day, a defeated opponent let it slip that his older brother had ordered the hit on Kane. Whoever could take him down would receive £20,000. They all did it for the dough. It was Lincoln who turned his life into a survival game and the canteen into a gladiatorial arena. One day, boiling water was splashed in his face. The attacker hoped that would be enough, but Kane only flew into a rage and became a little more handsome. Somehow the boxer managed to survive that brawl. As a reward, He received 5 weeks of isolation and 2 additional years on his sentence. After solitary, the battle for survival continued. New scars, new holes in his body. One day, Kane lost his mind and killed an inmate. Another year and 6 months in solitary confinement. Year after year passed. Kane maimed prisoners, fought with guards, and racked up more prison terms. His mother continued to visit Kane in prison. She no longer recognized her youngest son. Kane had become hardened, but the news that his mother had been diagnosed with cancer devastated him. She loves Lincoln. After all, he helps her and supports her in everything. So Kane didn't tell his mother what a bastard her eldest son really is. But when the woman was gone, nothing could stop him from seeking revenge. In the elevator, the fighter beat up the cops accompanying him, got rid of his handcuffs, and robbed a man who had stopped to use the restroom. The gangsters rebelled. They also wanted to use the restroom. Hyde still finds it hard to believe that Kane had turned into such a monster in 7 years. As ordered, the man stole the bag containing the package and ran away, but the woman chased the thief with all her might, and as Mabel was crossing the road, she was hit by a car. Kane was immediately arrested by the police. Thus, he became indirectly responsible for the death of the mother of 3. The investigator explained that they had been tracking his gangster brother for 3 years. This woman was one of Lincoln's victims, and also a relative of his debtor. A close associate agrees to perform some errand for the crime boss to pay off a debt. For example, to deliver a package of money. Then a muscle man like Kane snatches the package, and so Lincoln ends up with another victim. During his reign, Lincoln left 150 people, 150 families, destitute. The smartest thing Kane could do was turn in his brother. However, the BOXER sent an interrogator. The burly sergeant took the uncooperative criminal to the interrogation room and began beating him. Kane tried to defend himself, and then the mustachioed man beat him up with particular ferocity. Finally, Lincoln arrived at the bar with his guards. The kingpin immediately began feeding the younger man a line. But Kane was no longer the simpleton he once was. He pointed a sawed-off shotgun at Hyde's head and demanded that everyone disarm. Once, as a child, Kane had pissed on his older brother while sitting in a tree. So now he was back in a tree. The guy whose leg Kane had blown open bled to death and died. But the escaped convict didn't care. He'd turned into a psychopath and a murderer. And it wasn't prison that made him like this, but his own brother, who promised the thugs a 20 grand bounty on his head. And all because a corrupt cop lied to Lincoln about Kane supposedly planning to turn them all in. Lincoln wanted to talk to the corrupt cop, that same Musak. However, Kane had already tracked him down and took revenge. This time, his hands weren't cuffed. So the fight was fair. True, at one point Musak armed himself with a hammer, but Kane took the tool and smashed his skull in. The prisoner hoped to see his mother one last time, but he was only 20 minutes late, because the cop stopped for vanilla lattes. But Lincoln wasn't there either, because he didn't care about his mother. Lincoln suggested Kane let go of old grudges and start over. But what to do with all the victims Lincoln abandoned? Forget about them too. To me, they're just another day at work, a waste of space, a bunch of assholes. Hyde started calling the debtors worthless people who deserved their fate. Kane was infuriated by this, and he blew Hyde's head off over a log. And yet, Lincoln cared more about this guy than his own brother. Incidentally, Kane managed to pay Lincoln's accountant a visit. He didn't recognize him right away. He was initially sentenced to 5 years, but during his time in prison his sentence was extended to 20. The accountant grabbed a sawed-off shotgun, but Kane easily took it back. He wouldn't touch the man if he helped him get all his money from his brother. Leave him about $1,500 and we'll transfer the rest. In an instant, Lincoln lost £2 million. $15,000 should be enough for a few porcelain teeth. Kane will give the rest of the money to the families robbed by the bandit. He himself can't be saved, but he will help the other victims, this bastard. This goal helped him survive, endure all the pain and suffering. A couple of days ago, Kane promised the investigator that he would turn in his brother, but only if he was allowed to see his mother one last time. Everyone except Lincoln can go. He doesn't need them. Lincoln was furious. Kane will only be able to fire 2 shots. After that, the survivors will tear him to pieces. The barmaid took the initiative and smashed a bottle into Kane's head. Because of this, he only managed to take out 1 bandit. The others started pelting him with bottles. The barmaid threw bats and other bladed weapons to her men. But Kane didn't chicken out. This was how every day in jail was for him. Only little Toon was able to slip away at the first opportunity. Kane had plenty of work to do without him. It turned out that Toon was running for the gun. But instead of Kane, he took down his own. The boxer took the gun and knocked out a couple more bandits. Finally, Toon got hit in the head. Kane also got it. But he was used to taking a punch. The madman bit a chunk of flesh out of the bearded man's neck. As usual during the fight, they stabbed him in the side with a knife. But the sweaty one soon regretted it. Another daredevil attacked Kane with a crowbar. The fighter broke his arm, and then his facial bones with the same crowbar. Only Lincoln and the bartender remained, shocked by the bloody carnage. Kane spit out another tooth. Lincoln is shocked that his brother is going to so much trouble for some losers. He was about to shoot his brother with a sawed-off shotgun but forgot to check the ammunition. And all because authorities are used to delegating dirty work to others. The woman threw a knife to the boss, but it backfired. Kane pointed the blade at his brother and ripped open his stomach. He finally dealt with that asshole. He apologized to the barmaid for the mess and sat down on the bench. Each of Lincoln's victims received £15,000. For ordinary people, that's a huge sum. Kane smiles because all these years of suffering weren't in vain.